Good morning. We're here at Bradford Public Library today and we're doing our adult summer reading. We'd like to thank you for joining us. We will be discussing how we have come together apart, which is the new Ohio motto, and during the coronavirus stay-at-home order, we have been imagining our story through pictures and recipes so that we preserve the heritage of our families. During this short time in your home, we will be practicing social distancing and wearing a mask as much as possible. Our team consists of 4 people. It's myself, Kathy. We have Joe, which you can't see Joe yet, but Joe, say hello.
Hello.
We have Mike.
Hi.
And we have Rita.
Good morning.
Now, if we go too fast or if you feel that you've missed something that we've covered, please feel free to return to our Facebook page. This video will be up sometime today, and you'll be able to start and stop the video anytime it's needed. Now, what we're going to do is we're each going to kind of cover how we addressed our family backgrounds during this coronavirus. For me, I had decided to clean out closets. I was staying home, there was no one there, I was all by myself, and as I was cleaning out closets, I found a trunk from my father. So instead of cleaning, I decided to look through the pictures. And I was amazed. The trunk had articles, had pictures, it had old yearbooks, and it was all relating to my father, my grandmother, and my grandfather, 2 people that I hardly ever knew. So as I sorted through the pictures, I marked, I'll just kind of give you the way I did it so that it might give you a starting point. I pulled out envelopes, and in the corner, which you probably can't see, I put a year. For each year, I slid pictures in that I found and figured I'd go back and identify them later. After sorting the pictures, I got 3-ring binders, and I used clear page protectors. There's 12 by 12, and you can get the 8.5 by 11. This was a good way for me to slide pictures in by the year or by a topic. It says, this is my great-grandfather, this is my grandmother, and then I went through yearbooks and copied off information. In this process, I found that my grandmother and grandfather went to high school together. Who would have known? So you can find so much history that you didn't know through a simple process of just organizing pictures. Something else I found is that as you find pictures, write on the back of them. Take a moment, put a year, put a name. You might know who it is today, like pictures from high school, but in 20 years, will your family know who it is? Probably not. And you might even forget. Lord, people change. So use these things. It's much cheaper than doing scrapbooking, and it's an easy way to organize. You can also use this time to contact relatives. You can use Zoom, you can use FaceTime. Just make a simple phone call or text them. Send your relatives these pictures and ask them to identify them for you. Not only does it give you history, it gives you that moment of spending time with a relative, something that we're missing right now. One thing coronavirus has taught us is that family's important, and we need to get in touch with our families more now than we have before. It's teaching us to rebuild the family unit. So let's do that through our pictures and our past history. Another thing we've found is that as you're searching for information on your family, look for ship manifest. Many of our relatives came from Europe or other countries. My family came from Hawaii. My family is Native Hawaiian, so being original families from the islands, there was no census back then. I also found that names change. Be conscious of how names have changed. People from such as Ireland, their name might have been McCain, which Rita and I both find that we're both Cains, but we're from different Cains. My family originally was McCain, and I had no idea until I started researching. They dropped the MC when they came through Ellis Island. So they're all different tools. My mother's name was Palipi, but when the English missionaries hit Hawaii, they changed a lot of the names to English names. So my mother went from Catherine Keola Felipe to Catherine Keola Phillip. Well, it was two different people when I was looking them up. So be conscious of that as you're looking for things. Look for ship manifest. We moved from the islands to the States because my father was military. We moved on the USS Mitchell. All my life, I knew we came across the ocean on a boat, but who would have thought it was a warship? So these types of things are available online. Just be careful what you find. Use 2 websites at least to make sure you're getting correct information. Collect birth certificates, graduation papers, marriage invitations, birthday invitations. For example, here's a birthday invitation for my aunt. She turned 90 in 2009. So what the family did, instead of just sending out regular invitations, they sent out an invitation with a map, with her birthday, and with the year, the age she was that year. Unfortunately, my aunt's gone now. She died in 2019 at age 103 days. But without this invitation, I would have lost what age she was. So there's so many little things you have that are important to help you restoring your heritage. Use school records, military records, tombstone pictures, things like that, which Joe will cover. Social Security records. There's many websites you can use. Recipes. Rita's going to address recipes. You can have your family heritage through recipes. My granddaughter is 12. She said to me one day, "Grandma, will you teach me how to make biscuits?" I said, "Sure." Half hour later, she says, "Will you teach me to make this?" I said, "Sure." Before you knew it, the day was over, and she'd asked me for 5 recipes. And I looked at her and I said, "Lexi, what's going on?" She says, "Well, you keep telling us that you're getting older, and one of these days you'll be gone, and we won't have these recipes anymore." So for Christmas, she wanted a recipe box. We bought her one, and I went to all family members, all branches of the family, and had them handwrite recipes for her. And when we gave her the recipe box for Christmas, she had recipes from all branches of the family. And now, each member that donated recipes to her are going to make those recipes with her, and then talk about the family or how the recipe came about. And that's important for your families. You think that children or grandchildren are not interested in your family background, but they are. They want to know about you and about where they came from. They just probably don't know it until something comes up, like the recipes or the ship manifest. It just opens new avenues. So let us help you. We're going to kind of walk through different things we have found to help you do this process. And if you have questions, you're welcome to come into the Bradford Public Library, and we'll help you out. We'll give you hints. We'll show you what we have done. Okay, so I'm going to let Joe talk to you about things that he has done, and then we'll get back together in a little bit. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Schaefer. I'm a librarian here. Our search has started out with my wife, Sherry Schaefer. She's been the catalyst for the family research that she's been doing for years and years now. She's had an interest in researching both her side of the family and our side of the family, and she has gone to extremes and going places and going onto websites and things. As you can kind of judge, we have a book that she has compiled over the years. This is just the book on her side of the family, which, as you can see, is quite lengthy, but we have gone to graveyards, we have gone to libraries, we have gone to court records and buildings, we've been into Canada looking at family trees. We've been in backcountry Vermont looking for records of the past. Ancestry.com is a wonderful place to start. It's free for the libraries. If you want to come into the library and use Ancestry.com, it is a good tool to start with, but it is not the only tool. And a lot of times Ancestry.com relies on people contributing information. to their websites. Sometimes that information is correct, sometimes you'll find out that it is not correct. So what we've done over the years, especially my wife, she has taken some information from other websites. One of the things we have found is census information. This is a copy of the 1790 census that we went into Massachusetts and Vermont to find. This is a history of her family starting back in the 1790s. She has gone on Ancestry.com and verified. She has got records going back to the early 1700s of her side of the family. We have ship information, as Kathy was saying. The ships that came over from England, from France, landed in usually Massachusetts, Barnstable areas. She has got records back into the 1600s for that information. One of the things that we really have found, and this takes a little work, it takes some legwork. We have visited many cemeteries over the years. Some of the tombstones that you'll see, I've got some pictures here, some of the tombstones are very clear to see. Age did fine with the tombstones. But there are some tombstones that have faded over the years. For an example, a tombstone like that. Weber has not been kind to a tombstone such as that. So you can go to the actual cemetery. A lot of times they will have cemetery records as to who was buried there, when they were buried. And it kind of gives you a starting point as to track back as to where they came from. There are excellent websites outside of Ancestry.com. I'm from Greenville, so a website that we use in Greenville for Darke County itself is www.dcoweb.org. It is a website primarily for Darke County residents, but you can certainly, inquire about anybody outside of Darke County. For Miami County here, they have a website, www.troyhistoricalsociety.org. It is the Miami County records of all the past people in Miami County. They have records going back quite a ways. You can research, families. You can research individuals. The grave website that we use to actually type in a person's name and try to find information as to where they're buried is www.findagrave.com. It is, like I say, type in the person's name. If there is a grave that there is a picture of, they will actually show you the picture. You can go back and do the research. There are several other websites that are free. There are some websites that do cost. I know the Dayton Library, you can have access to Ancestry.com right now through the end of June for free. So if you're not into the library and you do have computer access at home, you can certainly use the Ancestry.com site right now. It won't cost you a thing. If you have military records, if you have people that you know are in the military, there are Civil War websites. There are World War I, World War II websites that, again, if you have information as to the person's name, you can type in that person's name. They will give you information as to where the person is buried. You can draw military records for that individual. A lot of information there if you know that person was in the military at some point in time. If you know that person is in a certain part of the country, maybe they came in Massachusetts. There are New England websites for Massachusetts, Vermont. That is primarily where my wife's family is from. That's where they settled. But you can go, we have books that you have access to all the 50 states at different websites for each state. So if you know where the person came from, if you know where the person started from, you can go to any of those states, get a website. But it takes time. It is not an easy thing to do. You will find that on one website you will see information that you think is correct, and you will go to another website and find totally different information. So don't rely on just one website to look at, or don't rely on one set of books to look at. You'll have to research, you'll have to dig a little. Libraries are a good source of information. Churches are a good source, especially the smaller churches that still have lots of church records for families from the 1800s. Like I say, don't rely on just one source, but probably the biggest source that I would say right now, if you are fortunate enough to have parents or grandparents who are still alive, use them for information. They most of the time would be more than willing to tell you stories of when they were children, or when their families came here, or when their families grew up. Use those resources. You can always look at a book. You can always look at a website. But please use your family. Please use your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins. They were there. They have the actual knowledge. Use them before they're gone, because like I say, with books and things, those books will always be there. Your family won't. Thank you.
Joe, did you also find that at times some of the websites are not correct because they're looking at handwritten documents?
The handwritten documents are very hard to judge because, like I said, you're relying on one person writing the information down, and then you're relying on another person transcribing that onto something else.
Right, because some of the documents are faded, or
They're
they
faded.
used English cursive back
Or
then.
they've transposed a date, or transposed or spelled a name wrong. I mean, our family, my wife's side, started out, her name is Beers, B-E-A-R-S-E. And you'll find at one point in time they dropped the E. So you might go looking for B-E-A-R-S, which is what my wife's side would be now. And you'll not find what you're looking for because the E is off. But yeah, you'll find there's information, people have, their memory fades.
Yeah. Well, and something else that I found is my grandmother's name was Halleen,
Okay.
Halleen, Halleen Faustina Coates. Well, when I was looking up her records, someone in trying to translate a document put her down as Helen Faustina.
Okay.
Because Halleen was not a common name, so as they were trying to decipher the written information, they named her Helen. Well, her sister's name was Helen. So then records started getting crossed between the two girls.
Between the two.
But when there's unusual names from the past, like you said, trying to transpose handwritten documents to type, some things got lost to where it's just reinforces to use more than one website.
Just leaving one letter out of the name would cause problems.
Oh yeah, Coates,
You
with
know.
or without an E.
I mean, that's what I say. When you start doing this research, don't rely on one website. Don't rely on one book's information, because chances are it was a family that put that information in the book. Dig deeper. Don't think that you've solved your problem with one book, one website. But like I say, your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, they lived it. They were there. They would be able to tell you. Hopefully, they have pictures. Because, like Kathy was saying, we have pictures at home that I have no idea who they are. We have a VHS videotape that was sent to me years ago. There's no audio on it. All it is pictures, and everybody who was connected with that video.
Go that far into
No.
your genealogy. Just
Start at the
pictures.
library.
or just do your family pictures, like the trunk I found. My goodness,
Yep.
it's back to the 1800s in pictures.
A library is a wonderful tool to use, but like I say, if you have pictures, if you have memories that, of things that you remember, but maybe you are a little fuzzy on, that you need to talk to somebody else, use your family, because like I say, that's the best resource in my mind, as long as they're alive. Like I say, you can always go back to a book.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay.
Yep.
Mike has more information for what he and his wife Rita have done. So he's going to kind of show us the kind of information he has come up with, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Mike Arnold. I'm a member of the staff here at the Bradford Public Library. My wife Rita got her start in genealogy back in the early to mid 1990s, back before the internet was available, and kind of put a hold on that for a while as she pursued her nursing career. But she found that her family on her mother's side settled in Darke County before 1830, and she got that information from references at the Greenville Public Library on microfiche that was available at that time, and through several other references. This one is The History of Darke County from 1880 by W.H. Beers. This is a reproduction of that. And two other sources from Garth's Museum by Fraser Wilson in 2 volumes. Volume 1 is a historical reference of Darke County. Volume 2 is a biographical reference of the history of Darke County. She also was very fortunate to have some information that she gained from her mother, who put together for her a extensive album of pictures, dates, where they settled. Her grandparents on her mother's side settled in Hillgrove, and she came across, talked about documents, as Kathy has alluded to. This is the birth certificate, I guess, of her, or no, it was her baptismal record of September 1915 in Hillgrove. Unfortunately, it was torn, but Kathy has told me how this can be preserved by putting some tape on the back and then having it laminated so it would be preserved. And she also presented Rita with her baptism, her confirmation certificate from the Federated Reformed Church in Hillgrove in April of 1927. So it's very important to save these documents, particularly look for pictures, as Kathy has said. Date your pictures that you currently take for your family members in the future, so they'll know who they are, what they've done, where they've been, their experiences. We went to the library in Westchester, Maryland one year to do some more research on Rita's mother's family. Found that her mother's family emigrated from England in the 1600s and settled in the Chesapeake Bay. And one of the members of that family was a Revolutionary War soldier, was buried in a cemetery somewhere in Maryland. We found that cemetery by tracking it down through church records. Found that the DAR put a new stone on his grave during the U.S. bicentennial in 1976. She also found that this man was an extensive landowner in that part of the country, and at that time owned some slaves. And when Rita presented that information to her mother was very upset that information had been dug up. She wanted to keep that hidden for all those years. So it's very important to keep these records, document them with pictures identifying where you've been and what you can find. So there's lots of references here at the Bradford Public Library. The Greenville Public Library has a lot of historical documents, as does Garth's Museum. So we highly recommend those sources. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to have Rita cover some other ways to get history for our little town.
Hi, I'm Rita Lease. I'm a native of Bradford, so I think a lot of you already know me. I also work here at the library. I want to talk a little bit about how you can preserve your family history through recipes. That's a particular interest of mine. I have several cookbooks I want to share with you here. The first thing I want to mention, always put a name on a recipe. I get recipes from friends and relatives, and I like to put their name on them, and that makes a special memory if you know who gave you the recipe. I have a framed recipe, and this is nice to do, I think. This is my mother's recipe, and it's in her handwriting, and I keep this in my kitchen. My mother was from Kentucky, and this is for Kentucky Derby pie, and this is one of my favorite recipes, and it's special to me because it's in my mother's handwriting. I have several cookbooks here that are from different local groups, and this is I love to cook and especially bake, and I like this type of cookbook. I almost never buy a published cookbook in a bookstore. I buy these that are put out by churches and other groups because they have real recipes with ingredients that you have in your home, and that are made by people that you might know. Some of these cookbooks are Kathy's, and this was done from the Women's Fellowship of United Methodist Church here in Bradford several years ago. So there are familiar names in this. And these cookbooks are available here in the library if you'd like to look at them and maybe find a good recipe or find a good memory from someone that you know from Bradford. This one's called No More Burnt Offerings, and it was made by, it's a collection of recipes by different fire departments in the area. This one says Piqua Bicentennial, and these cookbooks all have some recipes from Bradford people in them, because this is a Miami County cookbook. This one's from Covington, Fort Rowdy Gathering Cookbook, and that also has Bradford recipes in it.
Now that one particularly has recipes from Nadine Levy, who worked at the school.
Right, right. Some of these do have recipes from people, names of people you'll recognize that maybe were school cooks and had recipes that you might have tasted from bake sales and soup luncheons and things like that.
And their family members are still here.
Right. So you might recognize some of the names in these cookbooks if you'd like to look at them. This one's called Railroader Recipes, and this one was published in 2007. And it has pictures of the old elementary, the old high school, and the current school building. And this has recipes. It was done at the time of the alumni banquet in 2007. And it has recipes from some people that are gone. It has their name, their year of graduation, and their recipe. I see Patches Trevino here, Wade Spencer, class of 1994, and some are older people. Dolores Listner, class of 1942, and this was very interesting to me. It also has old pictures of the Bradford Railroad buildings and so on. So that one is interesting not only for history, but for recipes. This one is called Cooking with Friends. It was made by the Bradford Friends of the Library in 1988. And this was all typed by hand. This was before the computer age. And it also has recipes. Here's one from Ellen Brubaker. Some of you might remember Ellen Brubaker was a teacher in the Bradford schools for years and years, very much loved. And her pumpkin cookie recipe's in here, and I still use that recipe. So I think you might find this interesting to look at these. And like I said, we do have them here at the library, and you can feel free to come and check them out.
Yeah, have you tried some of the recipes in there? Or
Oh, many of them, many of them. I love to try recipes. Also, what we would like to do, if anyone's interested, you can bring in your recipes or send them in electronically, and we'll see if we can put a little cookbook together, and we can call our COVID-19 recipe book. And
Our stay at home and
Or-
cook.
that's right, stay at home and cook.
Pandemic, yeah.
Right, I think a lot of us have done extra cooking while we've been at home and when the restaurants were closed, and so we can make our own little cookbook.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
thank you, Rita.
Sounds very good.
Okay, I know we've given you a lot of information, a lot of things that you can do, and it can be kind of overwhelming. So something that I did to kind of cut down the panic in this chronology of family and tracing our history is I created 3 books. I started with my father, and I made his family book. And I took it all the way till he went into the military, because my father's only in the military a year or 2, and he met my mother in Hawaii. So then I did my mother's family, which was the Palipi Phillips, and I started out with Ohana, which is family in Hawaiian, and we did our Ohana, and we created, let me find your page, family record groups. And with that, we did my mother's entire family. She was one of 18. And we have a history record on each of the family members and on their children down to their grandchildren. Then I did a combined book where my mother and father got together, and I did the Kane family with my brothers and I. So I started out with the family group of my father and mother getting married, and then my 4 brothers, my 3 brothers, and myself. And I did a list, and then I just started making sections in this book with page dividers. And I started out with mom and dad, and then listed their parents, put their birth certificates, their death certificates, their baptism records, everything in one of these little sleeves. I put a copy of those documents so that someone down the line would have them. And then you do a divider, and I did my oldest brother, Michael, and then I added in his wife and his children. Then I did my next brother and did the same thing with him. Of course, he has a big section. He has 4 marriages. And then I did myself, and I did my younger brother. So this helps keep down the stress. Don't stress over what you're doing. Try to get something to organize it. Keep it separate. You can jump back to it, and as you run into pictures, stick them back in the book they belong to, either my father, my mother, or my family. And then you can go back later, as I did here. I put pictures in, and then I would go back and add information. Like I found a picture, and I asked my father before he passed away who was in the picture. He looked at it and he just smiled. He said, "That's my first girlfriend." I forget her name, but it's in here. He was 11, and that was his first girlfriend, and the woman in the picture with him was my great-grandmother, who I never knew. I found old report cards, so put them in. Get your sheets, your plastic sheet protectors, put pictures in it, put a date maybe down in the corner, and that way you have at least a year. As you find pictures, stick them in. Then you can go back later and put them on paper. Now you don't have to use scrapbook paper. You can use standard white paper. You can use 12 by 12 as in this book, or 8.5 by 11 as in this book. It's just a way to organize your family, keep it together for later use for other family members. And like Joe said, share your stories. Your children, your grandchildren, they'll love it. Come to the library. We have many resources you can use. We have Ancestry.com, as Joe said, is free in your home through the end of June. After that, you can come into the library if you have a valid library card. Come on in, get on Ancestry. We have an innovation station, which is the area we're sitting now. As the library is closed today, we could show you everything available. We have a Cricut, which we'll show you over here. We have a Cricut machine where if you have your pages put together and you want to embellish them, with say, when I have my family from Hawaii, I may want to put palm trees. I may want to stamp the pages to make them decorative. We have a Cricut. We have stamp sets with ink pads. We have a large supply. It's available for your use, free of charge. We have many stamp sets. We have letters, we have pictures, we have verses, we have ink pads, many, many different colors of ink pads. And this is all for your use. We have books to help you with things that you may want to do. Markers, anything you want to create your books, please come in and see us. We also have a photo printer. It's over here by Rita. This photo printer, you can do multiple things with it. You can bring in your camera, you can bring in your USB sticks, and you can print photographs directly to this machine. You can also bring in your old VHS tapes, as Joe had alluded to, and turn them into DVDs so that the newer technology will allow you to view what's on them. You can print pictures off of DVDs. We've got everything available here for you. Come in and see our librarians and let them explain to you what you can do. And there are costs to some of the items we do if you have your own paper versus using our paper. So that's something else you can discuss with the librarian. As Mike had alluded, the laminator. If you have old photos that you do not want to pay to get restored, you can bring them in. We will tape them on the back so the tape doesn't yellow on the front of the document or the picture, and then we can laminate them for you. This will preserve them for you for all time. We have the Bradford Bugle, which the Bradford Bugle, all the issues there were are here at the library. There's a lot of history in these magazines. Like this one is Opening of the Bradford Driving Park. I didn't even know we had anything to do with golf here, but it was down 721. So there's history there. There's articles from the schools. There's article from the sports teams. This one, Bradford Powerlifting Team, places third, 1990. It's good information. Here, Bradford reports history from headlines, 1931. The bank at Bradford was robbed and an official was shot. But the cashier was wounded and slugged. What have you heard the word slugged? I haven't heard that word in years. But there's a lot of histories in this. On the back of this one, it says Piqua Daily Call, 1931. 5 bandits who robbed Bradford Institution made good their escape. So there's a lot of history here. When I first discovered these in the history room, I copied some of the articles and dropped them off to people, like Dr. Trevino. He had an article in here from his senior year in high school. He wrote a paper and he was commended for it. So I copied that information off and I dropped it off to him in patches. Something that I wasn't sure they were aware was in our library, but it was part of their history. This one has the old school, the original school for the high school before we built the new one. You go to that spot now, you don't even know there was a school there. So here's history. You know, come in and look at it. It's interesting what you'll find. Yearbooks. In our history room, we have all of the Bradford and the Pathway yearbooks. You know, please come look at them. We can scan them, we can put them on an electronic format. That doesn't cost you anything, and you would have that for your history. In the history room, we have a lot of local genealogy. So if you would want to come in and access any of this information, you know, please call. For the moment, we're asking that you make an appointment, that you wear a mask, and that you practice social distancing with us. You know, times are changing. People are reconnecting through this time of staying apart but getting back together, and we're wanting to help you preserve your history. So please come see us. We're always here. Thank you.